Hello friends and welcome to Pony Plays Card Games. I'm your Pony, and today I've got a bit of an interesting unboxing where I managed to get my hands on all 6 of the demo decks for the new My Little Pony card game that were used at the demonstration events. So they are already opened. I had to get these secondhand, but that means that I could guarantee getting one of each of the main 6, because from what it looks like, the boxes look identical. So I'm imagining that you just got a random deck when you went to the event. So we actually know that we've got all 6 of them and can see what came inside these. So I'm gonna crack into it and see what it's like in comparison to the actual structure decks that I've already done unboxings for all of those. So if you want to see what comes in the structure decks that you can buy at the moment, then you can check out those videos. I will put up a link for them. These are the ones that you would have gotten at the event. So this looks like Twilight Sparkle. There we go. So that is the Ruby Rare. And it's a different Ruby Rare to the one from the deck. It looks really nice. It's a very cute art style. And there's the back of it, which the Ruby Rares I've got the Pinkie Pie deck just over here. The Ruby Rares and the decks had the characters' faces. So that's a very different style of back to it. But I really like that art. It's got a couple of cards up the front here too. I don't know if this has been mixed up, because yes, these, as I'd said, these are all opened already. There is the scene cards. These aren't actually foil. These are just a matte finish. Whereas all of the scene cards from the structure decks we've done so far and the booster packs have all had a lot of glitteriness around the edges. They've been really cool, even though they're in the black and white. They've had a lot of foiling done to them. So these are the plainest cards I think I've seen from this game so far. And here we have the story cards. So that's number 4, 3, 2, and 1. So this looks like it's running through episode 1, where she's learning about Nightmare Moon gonna be coming back, telling Celestia, and Celestia sends her to Ponyville to make some friends instead. And one notable thing is that Stage 1 and Stage 2 don't have any abilities on them. Stage 3 there, let's get this to focus. Stage 3 has draw a card when you reach the story stage, and Stage 4 wins the game, like all the other story Stage 4s do. So that would make it a lot simpler for people not having to remember what's going on their story stages for abilities. Make it a bit easier to learn. And here we have the deck. Oh, okay, here's another interesting note. You see this star foiling? That is generally done on the commons for this game. This one here is an uncommon. You can see there's the brown looking gem, as well as in down here there's a U. Let's get that to focus in. I think I'm holding it too close. There we go. There's a U, so that's UO2, so it's uncommon number 2. And it's marked as starter deck card number 1A. So this is a card that you actually got in the Twilight Sparkle starter deck that you can buy at the moment, but its foiling type is entirely different. So we've got a full set of her. Here we go. This is one that I don't recognize, a 5/7 Spike. And yep, it's marked as TR01A, uncommon. So all the uncommons are star foil like the commons normally are. And this one is one that's exclusive to this trial deck. So you won't see him in the regular Twilight Sparkle deck. Here's another trial deck uncommon, which you get 4 of instead of 3. even though it's uncommon. Here we go. Here's a starter deck common. So the commons and the uncommons are both Starfoil. So it's all Starfoil. Here in the deck, SDO1, Beta 4 of. Oh, cool. More Aloysius. This one's a trial deck Aloysius. Aloysius is actually pretty handy because there's Twilight Sparkles that refer to having Aloysius on your field. So having different Aloysius is actually pretty handy. Here's a trial deck Spike. Starter deck Twilight. Another trial deck Aloysius. So you got plenty more Aloysius. It's a very straight on picture of him. There's another Spike. This one's from the starter deck. Another trial deck Aloysius. So plenty of Aloysius. Which means not much that you're going to be inspiring with your scene cards. There's lots of Spikes and Aloysius. Only a handful of Twilight Sparkles actually in the deck for you to use inspiration from your scenes. And we've got some Starfoil in the Sapphire Rare in the event cards. So this one was the researching where you got to draw 2 cards. This one gives Twilight Sparkle +2 inspiration. That's it. So we've got a couple of event cards to be able to have different card types in the decks. No item cards in here. And full playsets of everything except for this big Spike, it looks like. Yeah. And all of it in the Starfoiling, which we're now more accustomed to as being a common. And I'll find out whether this is meant to be... Oh, there we go. This one here, this item card, is in the proper foiling. I wonder if this is like a teaser, if these cards are intentionally separate as like a teaser for what we're meant to get, as opposed to what we're getting with the foiling style or no foilings here. We'll have to keep an eye out in the other decks. I'll give it a count and see how many cards, because you're only meant to have 50 cards in here and 15 cards in there. So see if that is actually in excess of the full deck count. And here we go. This is the deck mat. See if the deck mat's different to what we had gotten. Okay, one thing that I do notice is different is the Ruby Rare is the artwork that we're seeing for this deck. But it does use the same example cards for everything else. Yeah, so this mat looks to be almost identical, except for that Ruby Rare. So that's cool to know. So the mats are slightly different, just because they're actually using an example that has that Ruby Rare, which is actually really nice in the full foiling you'd expect of a Ruby Rare. So we'll stack these back up. Set Twilight aside here for the moment. And go on to the next one. And I won't unfurl the mats for the others, because I'd just be assuming that they're gonna have just, again, a different Ruby Rare. So we know what they'll be like. But here we go. Here's a full Silver Rare Pinky. Again, separate from the rest of the deck. And a common. So I'm gonna be guessing that this is kind of like the booster packs that we got with the structure decks, where it's a teaser of what you can get when you can actually get booster products and proper stuff, because that's a pretty strong card if you're to be adding it into a trial deck. And I didn't notice any effects on non-event cards for the last one. There's Pinky in a Room as the Ruby Rare. I actually really like what they're doing with these Ruby Rares. They'll be cute to use. Even if the rest of the decks are a bit vanilla, they'll be very cute to use. Here we go. There's where Pinkie Pie met Twilight in the first episode. And threw her a party. And brought all her friends, and she drank hot sauce. There you go. And there's them trying to figure out what they're going to do about Nightmare Moon, I think. So that's, again, no abilities on the first two stages, draw a card on stage 3, and win the game at stage 4. So keep it nice and simple for people to learn with. There's our scene cards. Again, no foiling. Same artwork as we got with the decks, but just as a matte finish. And we've got Gummy here, who is one of the starter deck cards. Here's a trial deck Gummy, starter deck Pinkie. There's an event card, the Evil Enchantress. So this one looks like it's actually been shuffled about a bit. This one's a trial deck Mrs. Cake. There's an item card, so they're willing to put item cards and event cards, which this item comes in the starter decks as well. They're willing to put them in there, which is cool to see that they weren't going to skimp on giving you all of the different card types to learn with if you got the deck. So there's a starter deck Mrs. Cake and a trial deck Pinkie Pie. Nice cheap one-cost Pinkie. There's the starter deck Gummy again, trial deck Gummy, trial deck Gummy, starter deck Gummy, starter deck Pinkie, trial Gummy, the Mrs. Cake from the starter again. So it looks like they're doing where they have some. This is a trial deck Pinkie of 4 cost 6. They're doing a lot of non-main 6 characters, which will make it that you can't use inspiration except on a few to keep that out of the regular game flow in limit it at least. So there's a trial deck Mrs. Cake. Nice stronger one. There's trial deck Gummy. There's more of the Pinkies. Looks like we've seen most of what we've got there. Evil Enchantress again. So we got about 3 of that no, 4. Yep, so one of these cards we must have only gotten 2 of, and the rest make up the regular count. And yeah, there's the Ruby Rare again. And the card backs are all their proper backs. So if you wanted to integrate these into your regular deck, there'd be no issues, because the Ruby Rares you don't shuffle in, so it actually doesn't matter what their backs are. Deck number 3. This one looks like Rarity. So there is an uncommon with the proper foiling type for an uncommon, or the proper foiling type for what they went to, and a common. So yeah, again, another 2 cards just up the front as separate to the deck. And there is the Rarity Ruby Rare. Brushing her hair. That's a nice one. I like the eyeshadow foil kind of effect that they've got on that one. There's the back for you. Here are the story stages. So it looks like each of these stories for the trial decks are just running through the first episode, where they meet the pony and how they interact going through the episode. And again, with no abilities on the first 2. There's our matte finish scene cards. And the deck. So this one has got a Sweetie Belle from the starter deck. There's one of the events from the starter deck. Starter deck rarity. This one's one of the trial deck rarities. A trial deck opal, so you can get some more. There we go. Starter deck opal. Got a bunch of opals in here. There's another one of the events from the starter deck. So I haven't seen any events or items from the trial decks. Looks like the trial decks have just gone with stuff like this that is base, very vanilla, effectless. There's another trial deck opal. Effectless characters to be able to add in. So that one's from the starter deck. And that way they can bulk out the deck with cards that don't have an ability as characters, so interactions are much simpler. Good for beginner players to be able to learn with. There's one of the trial deck rarities. That's a different rarity. Another trial deck rarity. Starter deck rarity. Very similar poses there. There's a trial deck Sweetie Belle. There's a... Oh, camera's out of focus. There's a different artwork for Sweetie. Yep, she's a trial deck one. So you can definitely see what the design team were going for with just a very base layout of cards for people to learn the game with, which is always handy to have. So that's the rarity deck. And again, the ruby rare. And deck number 4. I see blue, which is probably going to be Rainbow Dash. There she is. There we go, Rainbow Dash. Looking very cool. I do actually really like all of these ruby rares, and one thing I really like is that they're shown a bit more in their environment, whereas the ruby rares that came in the deck, like each of them is around their home turf, where the ruby rares in the deck were all out having a walk in the forest, and so it was just that character in a woodland scene, which is still really pretty, but this feels a bit more personal to the character, which I do like. So there was Rainbow Dash. We've got, oh, there we go. This one is one of the scene cards in the proper foiling. So that must be one of the two. This deck's not in the same order as the others. So we might have a card mixed in with the deck that's not supposed to be. But this is a really good example so that I can show you all the difference between the foil and the matte. That's what we're looking at between the finished design versus what we got in the trial decks. And the story cards, make them in order here. Twilight first being crashed into by Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash coming to wash her off. And making her mane go that awesome frizz. I thought that looked really cool in the episode. I liked that. And her clearing the sky. 10 seconds flat. Leaving them jaw dropped. And yes, again, the scene cards and the deck. So, this one's one of the trial deck ones. A really big... Oh, that is super cool. Okay, so, reason that I find this card here in particular so cool is that when you're playing the Rainbow Dash deck from the starter deck off of memory, and I haven't played it very much, but it was full of low-cost, low-inspiration cards. So they weren't super strong, but you could get them out very quickly and sort of spam the board and do early game attacking. But this one here is a 6 cost with an 8 inspiration with Rainbow Dash's name, so the scene cards can actually inspire her. So that means that you actually have a late game bomb. This one only came in the trial decks, which is interesting. It makes it that the deck that they released was really focused on early game being fast, which works for Rainbow Dash perfectly. But having access to a card with these stats, I think, is really cool, because I would actually put that into a Rainbow Dash deck if I was building my own Rainbow Dash deck, just to have something that could keep up late game with the power curve that you're looking at. Here's another trial deck one, a 5 cost 7. So they put all the really big, beefy Rainbow Dash in the trial deck. That's kind of funny. There's a really strong tank, trial deck tank as well. That's our 2 of for the trial deck. This one I've recognized from the starter deck. So that was one of the biggest you could get in the starter deck, was the 4 cost 6 Rainbow Dash up in the tree. There's a trial deck Scootaloo. Starter deck Rainbow Dash. Starter deck Scootaloo. Starter deck Rainbow again. There's a trial deck tank. Fallen forwards. There is a trial deck Scootaloo, which is cool to have, because having more Cutie Mark Crusaders, they're actually showing some support towards them recently in the booster sets, which is great to see. Hopefully we'll be able to do a deck for them soon. This is a starter deck tank, and then a couple of her event cards, which were both featured in the starter deck. So the Rainbow Dash deck, I love all of the Ruby Rares that I've been getting. They've been really good. But out of the stuff that I'm actually interested in, the main cards from the deck, I think what I saw in Twilight Sparkle with the different Aloysius, if I want some different power level Aloysius, as well as the really big Rainbow Dashes, if I was looking to play these cards in a game even though they have no effect, that's what has me most excited for actually using these, aside from being able to sleeve them up and teach people how to play the game where there's not many abilities printed on the cards. So that makes it really handy for just doing instructional games. So I like what I'm getting here. Definitely can use it a bit more than just for the collection. Here we go, Fluttershy. Oh, look at her. That is a really sweet Fluttershy Ruby Rare in her cottage. A little butterfly flying with her on her tail. She almost looks like she's in the shape of a love heart too. That's just a very aesthetically pleasing design. Very sweet. I like how the backs are also color-coded to the characters. I think Rarities was really nice as well. They've done well. They do different backs for each of the Ruby Rares, especially if you get an Alt Art Ruby Rare as well. Here we go. So there's the matte scene cards. I'm not seeing nothing's missed in the box there. Just not seeing the extra cards. So maybe in there somewhere, but these were second hand, so I don't know if every deck's gonna be the same or that, but this is what we got. This is what we can check. So there was Fluttershy showing her birds how to sing, or getting them all prepared for the Summer Sun celebration. Twilight introducing herself. Her seeing Spike as a baby dragon and wanting to know absolutely everything before Twilight convinced her that he had to go to bed. And we have the deck. There we go. So this one is a trial deck Fluttershy. We've got a trial deck Angel Bunny, which is actually decent stats. And Fluttershy's like to have angels on board for some of their abilities, so that's a really good one to have as well. Shame then that only came into the 2-of. There's a starter deck Philomena, so we've gotten that one in the Fluttershy starter. Starter deck Fluttershy. A trial deck Angel. There's a trial deck Philomena, when she was not feeling as well. A starter deck Fluttershy. This one's a trial deck Philomena. 2 cost 4. Starter deck, one of the turtles. There's a trial deck Fluttershy. So you get a nice cheap costing Fluttershy there. This one's a starter deck Angel Bunny. And I think this was the one that gives all your pets +2 inspiration as an action card. There's her picking flowers. And that leaves us... So I didn't see any extra cards in there, but that's no issue because the extra cards were all just things that came in the starter decks anyway. So we already know what those are. This one is the last deck. So we then know exactly who we're dealing with here. We've got Applejack out bucking apples in her orchard. Yeah, I've personally been happy with every one of the Ruby Rares in these decks. They made it worth it for me just to have them in my collection. So here we go, the story cards. There's Applejack doing some apple bucking and the apples falling into the buckets. That's where Twilight first met her on the farm. Her shaking her hand crazy. Introducing the Apple family and asking her to stay for lunch. Here are the scene cards. And the deck. So this one's been mixed around a bit as well. So we've got one of our Sapphire Rare action cards, which is in the starter deck. I haven't seen any of the action item cards yet that don't come in the starter deck. So it looks like all of the cards that had an ability outside of those, which are still very much more vanilla story cards, all of them come in the starter decks. So this is a trial deck Winona. This one, there it is, focused in. Trial deck Applejack. It's cute art for Applejack. This one's a starter deck one. Trial deck exclusive. Those events again. This one's a starter deck one. Starter deck one. Starter deck Big Mac. Trial deck AJ. Starter deck AJ. Trial deck Apple Bloom. Not a bad stat range for that one either. Another trial deck. So some decent Apple Blooms for people trying to do a Crusader deck. There's trial deck Winona. Apple Bloom again. We've seen these ones already. This one's a starter deck Winona. Now, looks like that covers, we've seen all of the cards in this deck now. Yeah. And so, that is then the full selection of all of the trial decks. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed getting that peek at what comes in these trial deck boxes that were handed out at the events when this game was first launched. And I'm really glad that you joined me. I was excited to see what came in them. I'm happy with what I got here. So, if you are interested in learning or playing this wonderful game, then I have got plenty of videos on it, on rules. I've got a gameplay video up, which I'll love to do some more when I manage the time. And there's also a Discord that I'll leave a link to in the description where you can come and find some games and chat and share in the joy of collecting. So yeah, come and join us. It's been wonderful having you along for the ride. And I'll see you all later. Bye for now.